Checkmate.
Well played.
It was?
Yeah, well, there is no I in you.
But there is a you in "You Done For."
Heavens, they're multiplying.
Well, hello everyone, and here we are again with another DuckTales analysis video. And boy, is this season having an amazing start for the first 3 episodes. It was so great to finally see F.O.W.L act for the first time and giving us somewhat of an idea of just how intimidating the villains can be. So as usual, ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn, get your favorite can of Pep soda, and let's get straight into the breakdown. Okay, so right off the bat, we can already tell that this entire episode is referencing to 007. There's even a particular moment throughout the episode where both Launchpad and Dewey refer their names from the last name to their first name, just like how James Bond would do.
Duck. Dewey, duck.
Pad. Launchpad. McQuack. My name is Launchpad McQuack.
Name? Bond. James Bond.
Yes, the name is Bond. James Bond. And by the way, very important detail is the fact that the glasses that both Launchpad and Dewey are wearing throughout the episode are VR glasses the entire time. And apparently within this universe, their VR technology is so advanced that they can use surrounding objects from around a room and just apparently make a game out of it. And the one major thing that really stood out to me was the fact that I didn't understand how the people didn't think it was a good idea to seclude the people using VR from the other people within the arcade section. Because clearly you can tell within this episode that it wasn't exactly the safest idea. Alright, now back to more important matters, and one significant point that I really should make is the fact that one of the F.O.W.L's lairs can be found underneath the fun spot area, which makes perfect sense. Black Heron even explains that they specifically chose that area, Funzo's, because they knew Scrooge McDuck would next to never visit that place. Also, let's not forget that it was revealed in the season 2 finale to us that Shadowblot is the mascot manager of Funzo's. And I guess while you're a bit caught up with exactly what's going on with Funzo's and the people surrounding it, let's talk about how Dewey gets captured by Steelbeak and apparently his plan to overthrow Duckburg. Now, like I said earlier, we have Dewey and Launchpad using VR glasses in order to play a game, and apparently it ends up being a spy game that eventually leads into genuine chaos. Within the game, they have to venture their way through some cliche baddies in order to secretly disguise themselves as villains by using a secret phrase code. And in speaking of the phrase, the person they have to say this code to is a character known as Red Feather, who is suspiciously voice acted by the same person, April Winchell. But quite honestly, knowing that doesn't exactly change anything, but I just thought it was something worth mentioning just in case. Anyways, continuing on with the episode, Launchpad and Dewey soon lose the game after Launchpad mistakenly forgets the passphrase, which is understandable. And so they lose the game and they're brought back to reality with Webby and Scrooge shown to bring them out of Funzo's. That is until Webby decides to help Dewey out by distracting Scrooge with a game of skee-ball, which results in the exact way you would expect from Scrooge of all people to react. Just coming from my season 3 promo analysis video, I totally called Scrooge potentially returning to his old game crazed self like how he was in the season 2 premiere. However, he not only obsessed over winning, but also believed that hoarding his very own stash of game tickets would be a wise investment. It soon came down to the point where Webby has to lie to Scrooge by telling him that there would be no point due to the tickets expiring on the same day. So, in the end, after the events of Dewey and Launchpad's adventure, we are revealed with Scrooge's final decision.
What happened to you? You get anything good?
Mustache comb. Cost me 3 million tickets.
3 million? How much money did you spend to get those tickets?
And now Scrooge must now endure the pain of every 7-year-old attempting to get almost any prize at Chuck E. Cheese arcade. Now that I've cleared up Scrooge and Webby's side of the story, it's time that we now discuss the events of what transpired during Dewey and Launchpad's experience. While Webby was distracting Scrooge for the time being, Steelbeak for the first time interacts with them while they're still believing that it's all part of the game. And you can already tell during Launchpad and Steelbeak's card playing that they're both the perfect rivals to go versus one another.
I get it.
Yes, I do as well. Go fish.
old maid.
With the two of them not exactly having the most amount of intelligence, yet having the buff muscles to help them during fights, which was the problem with Mark Beaks whenever the villains decided to work together and teamwork their way against the Duck family for the first time. To me, I felt like despite the fact that Launchpad and Steelbeak are at the opposite ends of the good and evil spectrum, the both of them have emotions that have some sort of connection. Just hear me out on this. Steelbeak throughout the entirety of the episode is treated like an imbecile to the point where he angrily shuts down anyone who may want to call him stupid. And so he even goes as far as using Red Heron's Intella-Ray, which is something that manipulates any creature's IQ levels, and fires it at Red Heron in frustration. Now Launchpad may be a bit more of a goofy character rather than a so-called brainless buffoon, however his response to feeling dumb is much different. Instead, Launchpad feels a certain sense of being not as smart as the rest, but yet his reaction is a feeling of uselessness or suppressed guilt. With Launchpad turning around, pondering to himself, scratching his head, reminiscing about how if he fails, his friend or friends may think less of him, which is totally something that I'll dwell on even deeper later on in this analysis, but that's the cold start of it all. Now, and speaking of the banter between Steelbeak and Red Heron, there's also their lair that can be talked about in great detail, like how the minions called Eggheads within the secret hideout are actual characters found within the Darkwing Duck episodes. And then there's this noteworthy quote from the portrait that says, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people." A direct quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. Also within the lair was a reference to Megavolt's lighthouse lair from Darkwing Duck and St. Canard. And in speaking of St. Canard, Red Heron also mentions during one of their fights after capturing both Dewey and Launchpad and their secret entrance underneath a ball pit, that Steelbeak used to be cooped up in a St. Canard prison, and Frank Angones on Twitter revealed that it was due to cockfighting. Something that is indeed a literal illegal crime in all 50 states due to it obviously being animal cruelty, but in this universe it could have also meant that he was in an actual fight between another rooster. Now another thing about Steelbeak and his character that I personally want to talk about was the controversy behind his original character traits versus his redesign. Same thing can be said about Doofus Drake, but this is honestly less serious. I've watched some scenes with the classic Steelbeak in it, and the comparison arguments are reasonable, however not as severe. The voice actor for Steelbeak now is better in my opinion. As for his personality, it is true. Steelbeak was not as dim-witted, but at least it's not to the point where they made him dumber than a sack of potatoes. And plus, this is his first episode as a F.O.W.L agent, and the dude was close to successfully taking over Duckburg despite his idiocy. Frank Angones also explained that though this is a much different approach for the character like how they did for Negaduck, we will see over time just how incredibly dangerous of a villain he becomes. Now back to the episode, Launchpad and Dewey get trapped inside of see-through prisons until moments later when the Chip and Dale crew just randomly walk through a crack within Launchpad's cell, followed by Gadget and the rest creating a custom-built airplane to make their great escape. Wow, it's like this show is creating all of these characters' origin stories so that they can secretly plan out for future reboots. Also, fun fact is that the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers instrumental theme is played during this sequence. Anyways, this is most likely due to Red Heron blasting Gadget earlier on in the episode, maximizing her brain power, which soon gave her the opportunity to increase their intelligence levels as well, considering how they are shown in the background of Red Heron's experiment lab. So they escape as well as Launchpad and Dewey, who attempt to fight off Steelbeak again, only for Launchpad to save Dewey from getting blasted by the Intella-Ray until Steelbeak later on captures him. Now this is when Launchpad's intellect is enhanced, and so he does James Bond his way out of trouble and goes out to rescue Dewey. And though his intelligence is now enriched, he still does his famous crashes, but yet in a much more heroic way with style. Plus, he even recognizes the danger of just how tremendously chaotic Steelbeak's plan actually is, as well as F.O.W.L plotting against Scrooge and his family. Launchpad manages to fight off Steelbeak after he nearly is bested by him, until the Rescue Rangers return again for the help. And yeah, even though they did have at least a short appearance, they could have at least had some dialogue, am I right? So with Steelbeak finally out of the way, Launchpad realizes realizes that there's no way to reverse the low IQ ray about to stun Duckburg and decides to become the almighty sacrifice. Which in a big way was emotional, as Launchpad says nothing about what's really about to happen to him while saving Dewey. And the same song that we hear Dewey saying from the beginning is the same song playing during this moment of sacrifice. And just before Launchpad completes the task in sacrificing his intellect, he questions himself and says, would he be good enough for Dewey? What about the many opportunities he could accomplish with his intelligence and much more? Since, as revealed within the 6th episode of Season 1, Dewey apparently is his best friend, despite him being an extremely annoying character in certain moments.
They are so self-absorbed.
Launchpad must have still enjoyed how Dewey embraced his goofy persona and didn't demean him as a person, and I guess since I find Dewey to be irritating at times, he still does have a great heart. So Launchpad and Dewey inadvertently save Duckburg, but yet we're found awakening within the Funzo's park again, something that was indeed no coincidence, as it's revealed that one of the Vultures ahead of F.O.W.L used the Intella-Ray to regain Red Heron's intellect back, and place Launchpad and Dewey back so that they would believe it was all a game. The intelligent side of Launchpad tries to warn him about the dangers of F.O.W.L and their plot against the family, but I guess he was too busy forgetting, and instead thinking of the color purple.
You must warn them! F.O.W.L is plotting against the family! Mr. McD, I've got something very important to tell you. I like purple. A lot. Man, I'm glad I got that off my chest.
But yeah, I guess him loving the color purple could also be the reference of the fact that he loves Darkwing Duck. Also, I just love how the Vulture mentions that anything to do with a ray isn't a great idea, which is so incredibly true. I mean, have you not seen a single episode of Phineas and Ferb? None of Dr. Doofenshmirtz's rays worked. But with all jokes aside, I'm really curious to see what else F.O.W.L has in store, especially with their supposed plan being to overthrow McDuck in a more sneaky, unexpected way. And since they are technically the ones who manage Scrooge's finances, they could be investing into villainous schemes and much more. This has been The Next Big Thing, after an incredible episode to be fair, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace!